Kalimera, kalispera, kalinichta. No matter where in this wild, wacky, and sometimes wonderful world you might be, thank you for making the Highbury Squad part of your day. It is a new week. It is a blank canvas. Time to tell new stories, paint different pictures, and we have a very special guest, one of my favorites at Squad Central today. Let's rock and roll, squaddies.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.
Monday to everyone, and joining me is one of my favorites, commentator, broadcaster, journalist, European guru, as I like to call him. Welcome back to Squad Central, Mr. Kevin Hatchard.
Great to be back. Wonderful to be back.
Good to see you. Before we get stuck into the football, are you an Academy Awards kind of guy? I know you and I love talking Eurovision Song Contest, and we're getting close. We're getting close. I do love Greece's song this year. I love her voice. She's the voice of an angel. Not sure if it's got enough Euro trash, though, to win, Kev.
That's always the calculation, right? That's always the calculation.
Are you an Academy Awards fan, watcher? Do you indulge?
I used to be, but what I found with the whole European football thing is that lots of stuff that I used to watch and do just melts into the background now because there are so many leagues to cover, so many games to cover. So it would have been back in the day, but I was talking to somebody the other day. I used to cover rugby. I used to actually report on the Six Nations. And I used to watch the Five Nations, as it was, which showed how old I am. Used to watch cricket, used to watch all kinds of stuff. And that just golf, used to watch a fair bit of golf. None of that now. Football all the way now, which is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. But the Oscars have kind of melted that way as well. So I do get a chance to do a few other bits and bobs. Keen reader. We're watching Severance at the moment as well. Me and my good lady. So we're enjoying that. So yeah, we do a few things apart from football, but increasingly less so. The truth is.
Well, as a Gen Xer and an absolute, I was obsessed with the Brat Pack in the 80s. I am reeling from my Demi Moore not winning. So I've got my stuff together enough to talk about Arsenal with you, but I'd met her.
I haven't seen
well.
The Substance. You met her.
I did in 1990. I want to say 3 or 4. Maybe it was later when Planet Hollywood first opened in London. I went to the event, and it was literally a who's who of stars there. And I got to meet one of my idols. I loved Demi Moore. And was having a chat with her. And as I was having a chat with her, Patrick Swayze comes and interrupts. And they have this little ghost reunion, Kevin. And I was like, fine, have your moment. But yeah, Patrick Swayze interrupted my mega conversation with Demi Moore. All is forgiven, though. Both legends.
How ironic, because presumably when Swayze turned up, it was like that you'd kind of vanished and couldn't be seen. Those two. So there's an irony there. There was no. I'm guessing there was no pottery involved. Nothing like that.
No pottery that night. Just chicken fingers and yeah. I've never ever asked a talent for an autograph because I was a publicist, back in the day. But I have her autograph on an old Planet Hollywood napkin. So there's my tidbit. Squaddies, I'm rude at ease. Welcome to Squad Central. Forget the Academy Awards. Let's talk about the Arsenal. Now, Kevin, this is what I love when we have you on the show. Don't forget to hit the like button, everyone. You're going to educate me. I always feel like I learn something new when I talk to you. And big news today, of course. I can't remember if it was Fabrizio Romano or David Ornstein who broke the story first, but Andrea Berta. And the other thing we like is how Kevin educates us on our pronunciations. Andrea Berta is apparently the leading contender, Kev, to become the sporting director of football at the Arsenal. I'm not going to sit here and pretend and profess to know everything about the man. All I know is the types of players he signed and the types of players he's sold. The floor is yours. Educate us on who he is before we get stuck into some nuts and bolts.
Yes, he's an Italian who's been recognised as one of the top sporting directors around and was with Atletico for a long, long time. If you look at what they've been able to do over the past, not just decade, but longer than that, he's been a big part of that. You're looking at Jan Oblak, widely recognised as one of the best goalkeepers in the world, brought him in. Signed Antoine Griezmann not once but twice because managed to get big money for him when Barcelona came in for him. And then you might remember there was quite a complex deal to bring him back from Barcelona. And it worked out very much in Atletico's favour. And you had actually at one stage that really bizarre situation where he was only playing limited minutes for Atletico because of the terms of the deal. But to sign him not once but twice is really quite something. Rodri, who was brought in from Villarreal and then was flipped, wasn't the kind of Rodri we know now, but was certainly on the way to becoming that. And of course, working with Diego Simeone can only have helped that situation. It hasn't all been perfect. The Joao Felix deal was hugely expensive. And even though Joao Felix did help them win La Liga, it did come at huge cost, and ultimately that didn't work. But I think possibly one of the most important things really is just creating that environment that's allowed Diego Simeone to compete at that high level year upon year upon year. I mean, to win what they've won, to compete for what they have, to have the kind of runs in Europe they've had, while not spending anywhere near in terms of the overall spend, what Real Madrid or Barcelona would generally be able to spend, is really quite something. And it's only recently, I guess, that they've really been able to open up Atletico. They made that big signing of Julian Alvarez, but before that's just not the kind of deal that they'd be able to do. So it needed somebody like him to be able to identify talent, bring it in and either develop it and sell it on, or develop it in the case of Oblak and become one of the really, really key players in the last decade.
When you say hasn't all been, kind of rosy, I do have some of the kind of the players that he signed, the most expensive signings. I mean, Joao Felix was, I can't believe, 127 million at the time. And you mentioned Alvarez, and I've got a list of some of the players here. Conor Gallagher, a player actually that I felt like maybe we could, use, but no Arsenal fan wants another Chelsea player. And then you look at his most expensive sales too that you've talked about. When you said like it's not all been great, is he a power guy? Is he always had a good relationship with Diego Simeone? What's your what did you mean when you referenced that?
Well, only in the sense that the Joao Felix thing was a really unusual situation because it was very out of keeping with what Atleti have generally done in terms of the money they spend, how careful they usually are. But you have to go back and remember. I mean, I was actually doing some filming in Portugal with Benfica around the time. And he was one of the hottest properties in world football. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you look at what he'd done. He got a hat-trick, I think, in Europe against Eintracht Frankfurt. He was playing brilliantly in the Europa League. I'd seen him first, actually, Joao Felix, playing in the Youth League, because he used to be a commentator for UEFA on the Youth League. And I thought, who is this kid? I mean, he stood out an absolute mile. Him and Ruben Diaz, who was the captain. And as soon as you saw Ruben Diaz, you knew he was a leader. You knew he was going to be a special centre-back. And then Joao Felix was just this willowy kid who looked about 12, and he completely ran the game. And you just thought, wow, okay. And he continued to develop, and he played in a very attack-minded team under Bruno Lage towards the end. And so they took a gamble. They took a risk, and partially it paid off because they won La Liga. and he was a big part of that. Played a lot of games in that season. But ultimately, if people are looking at was he worth that amount of money, maybe not. But it's a strange club in the sense that it's come a long way in a relatively short space of time. I mean, you cast your mind back, it wasn't that long ago in the grand scheme of things. They were a second division team. Now, it's a big club, but under Simeone, they've become, one of the big three in Spain, while some of the other traditional clubs have kind of withered away. So, yes, there are any sporting director makes mistakes. Absolutely anyone. Because every transfer is a risk. There'll be clashes with coaches and players. There'll be players who don't settle. There'll be all kinds of calculations. It's not a precise science. But I think if you look at his overall spell, he absolutely got more right than he didn't. And, Oblak's still there. Griezmann, for me, has been one of the most influential players in La Liga. The fact that at the age he is, and he's not decrepit, but he's not getting any younger, but the fact that he still delivers time and time and time again, there was no guarantee that was going to happen when he came in from Real Sociedad. And having gone to Barcelona and seen it not work out, Simeone obviously had a big influence in bringing him back, but that was still a calculation that they had to make. That was still a risk that they had to make. So, yeah, I think the news is positive, but like any transfer, like any appointment, like any coach you bring in, you don't know if it's going to work, but the track record is absolutely there.
Kev, when you look at Simeone, he's a name and he can attract players. How much of the really good signings that he's made, Simeone identifies the players, or how did the relationship work at Atleti? Was it driven by the sporting director? Simeone says, "Here's the fish I want, go fishing." Is his reputation, clearly he's a closer. Look at the players he's signed. How did it work there, as much as you know?
Look, I think generally, I mean, Simeone's a big character, right? And he has absolute authority at that club. He's also incredibly well paid, and he should be, because he, by sheer force of personality, motivational ability, tactical ability, has been able to make a huge amount of money for that club. So yes, he has a say, but as you'll find with a lot of continental models, there has to be an element of synergy there. There has to be an element of working together. So that being the case, I mean, there are some similarities in the sense that Mikel Arteta is very much established at Arsenal, as you well know. He's earned that in terms of the consistency that Arsenal have found in recent years, the improvement that they've made. And so he's somebody that I think can work with the coach, but they have had spells where they haven't been able to spend a lot of money, and they've had to mix and match, and they've had to rely on Simeone's ability to develop players. So it hasn't always been easy. There hasn't always been pots of money to spend, and they have had to, really kind of rely on Simeone's ability to make a lot out of a little. So, I think he's somebody that absolutely can work within a structure. And, if you can work with Simeone effectively, somebody as passionate as that and such a big personality, then you should be able to work with most people. I'm not saying Simeone's difficult, but he's a
I know what you mean.
personality.
Sure.
And he's a winner. He's a winner. I mean, he's desperate to do well. I mean, you only have to look at one of the games they had recently. You mentioned Conor Gallagher. Conor Gallagher made a couple of, the double tackle, and Simeone's there as if they've won the World Cup, the Euros, the Champions League, La Liga, all rolled into one, and quite right too. So yeah, if you've worked in that environment where you've had to really mix and match and you've had to make do and mend at times, but you can also make big signings, I think that bodes well potentially if he goes to Arsenal.
So, one of the things I think Arsenal fans want to see a little more of, and I think, we all want someone in our careers to challenge us, to keep us on our toes. It's okay to feel someone breathing down your neck if they're, positive effect. You don't want to be micromanaged. But I think a lot of Arsenal fans believe like there's very little pressure on Mikel Arteta, and at other clubs, the sporting director has that power to put pressure on the manager, or at least make him feel the pressure. The goals are Arsenal are high, whether some fans want to hear it or not. Of course, they want to win, the big trophies. Do you think this type of hire, without him being an Arsenal person, I'm really happy about this, by the way. It was Alabe for me, or someone like Berta, who comes in with no ties to the club. Of course, Alabe and Arteta have had a relationship, but when you're talking about Rosicky and all these other players that he played with, is there a signal maybe from his Atleti days where Diego Simeone felt some pressure from him, or Simeone's kind of like the Don of all Dons and untouchable? Do you feel like this will give Mikel Arteta a little bit of a kind of a competitive boost, if you like, that he can come in and apply some pressure?
There've been times when Simeone's looked as though he might go, but I must admit, it always felt like that was on his terms. Even when they were having rough spells, there was a feeling that maybe Simeone might feel that he'd taken it as far as he could, and therefore would walk away in the summer. But that never happened, and actually he found that hunger and that desire to go again. So I don't think there was necessarily that feeling that he was close to the axe, because he'd become such an icon and such a lodestone for everything they do. You think of Atleti, you think of him. Absolutely. You think of the style of play, the passion, the commitment, but also the cohesion as a team. And it hasn't all gone well. They've had seasons where they've not been competitive. They've had European campaigns where it hasn't gone well. They've had a lot of nearly moments when they've nearly won things and pushed, and it's just fallen away. But it felt to me like it was always on his terms. Now, that's not that Berta wouldn't challenge Arteta. It may well be that he would, but the thing we don't know at this stage is we don't know what's his remit. How much power does he have? What's his role exactly going to be? Is he going to be able to apply that pressure if that's the case? So it's a really interesting one, because Arteta's been there relatively, when you think of head coaches, quite a long time, when you think of managers. And so he deserves to have that say, but you don't necessarily want him to be all powerful. So I think that balance is going to be really interesting. But I think Atleti's a difficult example, because Simeone's been there for such a long time, and it always did feel as though it was basically on his terms whether he was going to walk away rather than he was going to get the axe.
Yeah, I mean, Arsenal do sign players by committee, but I wondered if this type of hire takes a little bit of that power away from Mikel Arteta, which I think is important for him to start feeling a little bit of pressure to deliver. And Arsenal's model, and we've been kind of ridiculed for it since the Wenger days, Kev, is like get top four, get the financial money from Champions League, keep churning the machine, release 455 merchandise, swag pieces, streetwear in a season, and all is good. But it's undeniable, of course, having spent time with the team as well, and of course they want to win. So I just wondered, you hit it there for me before I even asked you about the power part with Mikel. One more on him before I get you out on two other subjects. And please hit the like button. We're here with Kevin Hatchard. You're doing commentary now on Amazon, Kev, and TalkSport?
So TalkSport, and for the league, I do a lot for the Bundesliga, so I tend to do a couple of games a week for them, do a fair bit for UEFA as well. So I'll be doing Champions League for TalkSport, doing kind of reports on some of the games, this week, and next week it will be UEFA on the Wednesday and a bit more TalkSport on the Tuesday, and at the weekends it tends to be mix of TalkSport and the Bundesliga. Busy boy.
I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything. Did he leave for a new challenge? I just want to establish not a difficult character, had been there long enough. They'd gone on this journey and he was ready for something new.
Yeah, he'd been there a long time. I think it was 12 years, wasn't it?
12 years, yeah.
So, yeah. So, and, you know, their evolution is really interesting in the sense that they are starting to spend a bit more now. They have made, I mean, I think actually they've got one of the strongest squads around, and I'll be really interested to see how it goes against Real Madrid over the next week or so, because they do have game changers that they can bring on. They really do. They have some real quality. I mean, Alexander Sørloth's come in. He gives them a really, really good physical option in attack. Alvarez, I think, is a brilliant signing. I think City really missed him until they brought in Marmoush. So, yeah, I think what you've got there potentially, if he comes in, is somebody who signed players at the highest level, who has signed players who are considered or have been considered as probably the top 3 in their position in the world. Certainly Oblak. I think there was a stage where he was the best goalkeeper on the planet. Rodri obviously signed him. He's gone on to be the best defensive midfielder on the planet. I think Griezmann is one of the 21st century's best forwards. 100%. I think you look at certainly most valuable. I mean, he's Atleti's record scorer. You look at what he did for France. I think he would still be a France player, actually, if the Mbappe captaincy thing hadn't been handled so badly. So, yeah, I think he has shown that he signed top players. Okay,
so real quick, would you, if you were Arsenal, would you hire Berta or Olave?
I mean, they're both great options. I mean, Olave's got that track record as well. But I do think you look at Berta and you think, well, look at the quality that he's been able to bring in, and not just proven quality. It was players that took a bit of a chance on and have really, really turned out to be, you know, great performers. Somebody like Carrasco as well, who actually became a really, really important player for Atleti. You know, and he's also shown that he can do different types of deals. You know, the Griezmann thing, signed him once, but then, you know, obviously then brought him back from Barcelona. And as I say, I'm sure Simeone had a lot to do with that, but then found a structure to bring him back on terms that Atleti could do. So that shows a bit of imagination, a bit of willingness to kind of do things in a different way. And I think that's really important. So I think either option is attractive and is a forward step. But Berta has certainly done a super job.
Yeah. And Morgie there, I think Kev answered your question. It's a combination of working with Simeone, identifying players, and also unearthing players too. So I think that's something that we really need.
That's how the model should be. That's how it should work. I think if you look at any successful operation, it's generally consultation with the coach, but it has to be independent. I think where it goes wrong sometimes is when it's clearly driven by the manager. I think if you look at Manchester United, for example, and they're a really obvious target, but I don't care. I'm going to do it anyway.
We don't mind.
Yeah, I bet you don't. Time and time again, what they've done is they've signed a group of players for a specific manager. And what happens then is that when that manager leaves or is sacked, you then do the same for the next manager because that's the standard you set. Then you do it again and you do it again. You end up with this Frankenstein's monster of a squad. We've got loads of different profiles that don't fit. What you need to have is an overall direction of travel. And the thing I find really interesting about Arteta, actually, just diverging slightly, but I think really interesting, is that I genuinely believe, out of possession, Arsenal are probably the best team in Europe. I genuinely think without the ball, in terms of how they're set up, in terms of the work that they do, I can't think of many examples that are better, genuinely. The issue is the trade-off with that. Because I commentated on the Forest game recently. And look, any team with the amount of injuries Arsenal have in attack are going to struggle. Of course they are. But I think what it does is it breeds habits. And so it's a really hard balance to strike. And if you lose it a little bit, it's really hard to get back. So I think out of possession, they're amazing. I think he's really smart in that way. It's then about finding that balance. And it's where I think, I mean, you know what a big fan of Havertz I am.
Yes.
And I think it's where people fundamentally misunderstand what Arteta wants from a centre forward. Because I think this idea that you could just plug in an Osimhen or plug in, genuine number 9 just doesn't work. Because what happens is Arteta has his list of what he wants in terms of pressing, in terms of link-up play, in terms of all that stuff, rest defense, all these things. And then, you can't just expect a pure goal scorer to do all that. And so I don't think they were ever likely to just do that and just go, right, here you go, here's a ton of money for Osimhen. I just don't think that was ever realistic. So they're not perfect. I think Arteta has made some mistakes in the transfer market. And I think as well, they made a really bold choice, which I applaud, and I think is going to really work well in the long term. They decided to create a pathway for the kids. And if you block Miles Lewis-Skelly, you don't see him. If you block Waneri, you don't see him as much. You can't have that development, that jump that he's made. But the cost of that is that your squad's not that deep. And when you have the kind of injuries they've had, it's then really difficult. So I think I can understand the frustration. I totally get it, because people are looking at it and thinking, Man City have finally fallen over and we're not there. But I think it is still all part of the development. I think it's a really difficult one, because I think he's done some brilliant work defensively, but he has very specific ideas about the attacking part. But you've had some injuries, some really key injuries. You take 4 top-line players out of Liverpool, if you took Salah, if you took Diaz out, if you took Gakpo out and went, okay, so you get on there, they'd struggle as well.
Very sobering comments. And I'm really kind of, because I wasn't in a very good place last week as an Arsenal fan, and it had been a really long time, Kev, since I'd kind of been to a darker place, because it felt to me that, gosh, is this dream, is this journey, process, progress, success for me, the third chapter, have we missed the boat? Have we kind of, when you go so close 2 years in a row, albeit the first one improbable, last year we should have won it, fell short. This year it felt like, David Hillier said on our show, he just couldn't see it because going the third time again is so hard. It felt like maybe other teams would catch up even more so. Look at Liverpool this season, that we missed the boat. And I kept saying to some listeners, like the Kai Havertz thing, be careful what you wish for, because look at, without him now, even if Kai was in the team now, we'd have a shot, we'd have a chance.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The thing, I think the thing is, and the Liverpool thing is really interesting, right? Because people, certainly a lot of Liverpool fans, certainly online, this is the case, are always quick to point the finger at FSG, always quick to say, we've not invested, they haven't got this, they haven't got that. That squad's really stacked. It really is. I mean, you look at, some of the players they've got, one of the best goalkeepers in the world, one of the best centre-backs in the world. Salah's been wild, absolutely wild. And so you have to be in position to go on that run, and Slot's done a brilliant job. I think Arsenal have done a lot of really, really good things. A lot of really, really good things. I think they have the best centre-back pairing around. I don't think I genuinely don't think there's a better centre back pairing than Saliba and Gabriel right now. I think when Saka's fit, one of the top wingers in Europe, Waneri, I think, is going to be amazing. The structure without the ball is outstanding. So all of that coaching's gone in there, and that works, and that's fine. But they lost Erdegaard for, what was it, 2 months, 3 months with the ankle. He was out for ages. So then, you lose that. So I just think, a lot of the work's been done. The temptation is to panic. But I actually think with a few good signings, they can take that leap. And Raya's been a great signing as well. You've got a great goalkeeper there. Let's see what they do in the Champions League.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of us do wonder too, like if MLS, Miles Lewis-Skelly would have gotten his chance had there not been injuries. The squaddies in chat are saying that. And Waneri, when Odegaard was injured, you kind of look now and think Arteta made a mistake not playing him earlier because he is that good. And
the caveat to that. Oh, sorry. Go on.
No, go on, Kev.
No, the only thing I'd say to that is I remember really early on doing an Arsenal game this season, and Arteta had given quite a big interview about the importance of trying to give them a pathway because Ben White as well, somebody's just made a really good point, actually. He was out as well. He had said, I remember what it was like as a youngster not being able to get through and not feeling as though there was a real chance for me to develop. And I think it was a conscious thing. So I know some of it's been happenstance because there's been key players out and therefore Lewis-Skelly has got through, Waneri's got through. But they were on the bench, as I recall. Some of them were on the bench and some of them coming through. So I think it was a mix, but I think they did get it wrong. I think they left it a bit too light, is the truth of it. Yeah. But look, any squad, if you lose Erdegaard for a chunk, Saka for a chunk, Martinelli, now Havertz, not many teams are coming back from that to win the title.
Now, I know I've got to let you go, but maybe you could do these ones quick for me. You mentioned the forward. If I don't ask you, and again, is it Sesko, Sesko?
Sesko.
Yeah. Okay. What's the scoop here? What do you think the reality is here, Kev?
I think he's a live contender to go to Arsenal in the summer. He was very strongly linked ahead of last summer, and he signed a new deal. I wasn't surprised that he signed a new deal because that's a very Leipzig thing to do. If you look at Leipzig's MO, generally what they do is they say to players, look, you've done really well. We'd like you to stay another year. Help us out. We will therefore ensure that you go for a reasonable price next summer. And that's generally what happens. It happened with Upamecano. It's happened with Nkunku. It happened with Timo Werner. They generally come to that agreement. You do a bit more for us. We continue to give you game time. You develop. And then you move on. And we all shake hands and everything's great. The thing that really was a concern about that at one stage was that Sesko wasn't always absolutely nailed down first choice. It took a while for that to be the case. He was linked with Arsenal again in January, and I was adamant that was never going to happen because Leipzig don't do mid-season transfers. They just don't, generally. Those big ones, they just don't do those sales mid-season because they're usually trying to compete for a cup or they're trying to keep going in Europe. That's not the case this season. Or they're trying to push for the top four, which is what's happening now. So I don't think it was ever realistic that he would go. The twist very recently, actually, is that it's being widely reported in Germany that it isn't just a gentleman's agreement. It's actually a release clause that's being put into the contract. Now, there's talk about that being 70 million euro, maybe 80 million euro, which is a hell of a chunk. But what you're buying with him is somebody who has proven he can score goals, but more importantly, somebody who has enormous potential and a great profile. Tall, fast, strong, scores goals. But also is in a pressing scheme that requires him to work without the ball. Because if you don't work without the ball at Leipzig, you don't play. It's as simple as that. So he's used to that work without the ball. So I think what Arteta would want from a centre forward, he could coach him. And I think that's fine. So I think he would work in the Premier League. I think he's strong enough to do that. He's got the physicality to do that. He's ambitious. He's lively. I like him a lot. I really do. And I think it would not surprise me if Arsenal made that move in the summer. There are good strikers out there. It may well be that, you know, these things are never certain. They're never guaranteed. But my understanding is that interest has been there for quite a long time and that he's very open to a move to the Premier League at some stage soon.
Kev, he's not a project player, is he? A lot of Arsenal fans think he is.
No. Can he get better? Yes. Has he got enormous potential? Yes. But is he a goal scorer now? Also, yes. I think he could absolutely come in and certainly compete straight away. And then it takes time for Arteta to get all that in. But he's a special player.
And we'll get you out on this one. What's the scoop here? Is it Kimmich? Is it a gimmick? Is it PR? Is it real?
I think there might be a bit of PR in there, if I'm honest. Look, there's definite Premier League interest in him because his contract's up in the summer. So of course there is. I mean, he's an established top-class midfield player. He's played almost every minute for Bayern in every competition. He's been excellent for them, actually, this season. Much more energized and much more like himself. I think he really lost his way under Tuchel last season. I think he was really upset by the way Tuchel spoke about him publicly, and some of the treatment he received in terms of being benched and being dragged off. It just doesn't happen to him usually. But look, Bayern are losing patience. There's no doubt about it. Bayern are really losing patience here. I did feel like when Davies signed the new deal, when Musiala signed the new deal, I felt like that was going to make it more likely that Kimmich signed too. But it feels like something's gone awry there. And I think the thing that's gone awry is probably that Bayern are saying, look, we've been waiting for ages for this. And we're actually starting to lose a bit of patience. So if you don't actually decide if you want to stay, we're going to have to withdraw the offer completely and start thinking about who we bring in to replace you. Now, the Arsenal thing could be one of two ways. And I genuinely don't know what the truth of this is. But I think it goes one of two ways. It's actually genuine. And it's Arsenal saying, look, here is a hugely experienced player that can help us in a lot of different ways because he can be a tempo setter. He can be an organizer. He can also do that mop-up role. He's great in build-up. There's loads of things he can do. So it'd be remiss of a club like Arsenal, actually, to not be interested. But also it could be Arsenal being used to panic Bayern. I think it's probably all part of the dance. But it would not surprise me if Arsenal are one of the clubs who are interested. Liverpool the same, Manchester City the same. Guardiola absolutely loves him. So I think all the top clubs in the Premier League will have registered an interest with his people. So it's then just about, does he want to stay at Bayern? And he has said publicly, he's basically said, this is my last big contract. You know, this is where I have to decide where am I going to have the most success. So what he said publicly is not, I want a new challenge. I want a new country. He hasn't said that. He said, I need to work out where I'm going to have the most success. So if he feels that's with Bayern, with Musiala, with Kane, with all those guys, then he'll stay. But at the moment, it's a numbers game.
Very interesting. And injury-wise, he's okay?
Oh, 100%. In the not the last game. The last game against Stuttgart on Friday, which I did actually, was the first time he'd not been in the starting 11 for any game this season in any competition. So he's played more minutes than, including Neuer, actually. He's played more minutes than anyone in the Bayern team or squad this season. His injury record is generally very, very good, actually.
Okay, cool. That header from the semi last year still stings, Kev. That goal he scored, that was pretty amazing.
Yeah, Kimmich shouldn't be scoring headers.
No, that's why it stings still.
Yeah. I mean, look, he's a brilliant player. he is a super, super player. He gets a lot of stick, actually. But I think what I actually really love about him and always have, he's got a bit of scrappy do about him. Now, younger viewers won't have a clue what I'm talking about with that. But he's got short man syndrome. He makes up for the fact that he's little by the fact he fights twice as hard, because everybody wrote him off. When he was a kid, they all went, too weak, too short, not going to make it. And he went, I'll show you. And he's become a top-class midfielder who's won absolutely everything. So, yeah.
Love that. Love it. All right, Mr. Hatchard, I'm going to stay on for a few minutes, so don't go anywhere, squaddies. Do some housekeeping stuff. Been brilliant from you. Can you see us beating PSV? Get your prediction before you go. I mean, it seems like they're in a good place. I think, did they lose 3? They lost 2 on the trot. They had been in a good place, lost 2 on the trot. Am I right or wrong in saying that?
Yeah, to be honest, they've been pretty bad in the Eredivisie for quite a while, actually. Ajax have moved above them in the title race. They went out the cup as well recently. But the only thing I would say, I mean, Arsenal favourites. But the only thing I would say is that I covered their win over Juventus in the second leg. And I was actually really impressed with them in the first leg because they really hung in there. And they didn't panic when they went 1-0 down. So with them, they are a good unit with a really smart, if idealistic, coach. Peter Bosz only plays one way. He's not going to dig in for a really good result and keep them in the tie. They'll go for it in Eindhoven. But I think the thing that's really boosted them and given them belief, they've beaten Liverpool at home. And in that second leg against Juventus, they were super. And they've got a really interesting blend up front. So you've got big, strong Luke de Jong, who's been around forever. It's like 900 years old, and he like scores tons of goals for them. He's still like really smart, really like streetwise. Noah Lang, who is a real diva, but a hell of a footballer. Really unpredictable, got a bit of oomph about him, really fancies himself, which I don't mind, actually. Johan Bakayoko is a flying machine on the other wing. And just some real rock-solid midfielders as well. And Perisic, who, again, is 2,000 years old.
I mean, seriously.
He scored a brilliant goal against Juventus in the first leg. Really well taken. So, look, it's one of those that
you've got me all worried now after mentioning.
No, it's not a worry, but I tell you what it is, and I talk about this a lot in the build-up to Champions League ties. It's one of those where if the fancy team is off it in any way, shape, or form, you can come unstuck super quick. So if Arsenal hit their level over the 2 legs, they'll go through. They'll go through because man for man, they are a better team and they're certainly a more solid team. But if for whatever reason, if they do what they did against Forest and have a real lack of imagination, and I get it, lots of injuries in attack, so that's the backdrop. I get that. But if they run out of ideas as quickly as they did against Forest, that's going to be a tough night. So yeah, if they're on it, they go through absolutely. But PSV are dangerous.
I don't know where the goals are going to come from. That's our problem. It's and the set piece goals have dried up too, Kev.
Yeah, PSV are pretty good from set plays as well, actually. Look, I mean, that is an issue, the reliance on the set piece goals. But that just doesn't disappear overnight. Gabriel's still an absolute killer in the box. And, you know, that, and you can still see that imagination. You can still see them trying loads of different things. You can also still see Javert standing up too much at set plays. I'd like to see that a little bit less, I think, to be honest. But, you know, that's just me being old school. But look, I think Arsenal are not the kind of team that PSV like to play, really, because they're so solid without the ball. That's the thing. I think PSV like to be in a more open game, and that's what they did really well against Juventus, because it became a fight. It became a real kind of shootout and a real kind of end-to-end kind of bit of madness, and that didn't suit Juve at all, but it really suited PSV. So, yeah, I think if Arsenal are controlled and they play their game without the ball, I think they'll go through, but I think it'll be tight.
Amazing. Kevin Hatchard, thank you so much for your time. Go follow Kevin at Kevin Hatchard. Listen to his dulcet tones as he commentates on European football across multiple platforms. Super Kev, thank you so much for joining. We will catch you again soon. Maybe we'll do another one of these at the end of the season and see how things go.
Sorted. Today. All good.
Love it. Perfect. At ease, mate. Take care. That is Kevin Hatchard joining us. Please go do go give him a follow. Brilliant stuff from him. On who Arsenal may be hiring is this fella from Atletico Madrid. Sounds interesting, doesn't it? Sounds like a bit of a baller. We've seen the types of players that he has bought in at Atleti, made some expensive signings, but also, and I know, Harvey, you were asking this question, has sold a fair few at a decent price as well. He's done some really good business. I mean, if you look at players like Kuna as well, even the Griezmann deal to Barcelona, the Rodri deal, really good kind of business transfer intuition, as well as, you know, the life cycle of the player whilst they were at Atletico de Madrid and what he has been able to do. So Andrea Berta looks like the favorite right now. And that's the hotline. That's Berta calling me now, just letting me know that, yes, the deal is on and it's happening. Some good insight on Kimmich as well. Sounds like a bit of a PR move, not only from the player, but of course, you know, we might be interested. However, doesn't seem as solid, by the way, as what he said about Sesko. It's, to me, I was kind of really encouraged by Kevin's words, and he mentioned the release clause. So be sure to share this show with your friends. The insights right here were exceptional, and good stuff on PSV. Don't really like playing teams like us, despite the fact that they beat Juventus and they were excellent in that game. It looks like, you know, Kev may have given me a little bit of hope. So please do share this edition of Monday Madness with your Gooner friends. I hope that you guys are all well. Great show, squaddies. Let's get some of your comments up as well. I think you all enjoyed Kevin. We're going to be back. Gooner Russ is in the house. Mark's been in the house. Albert's been in the house. Imran's here. Runs with Cows is here. Harvey is here as well. Of course, our chief like officer, Tammy Steels, making it clear we can't score and we can't. But I don't know about you, Tammy, and the rest of the gang, but Kev gave me a little bit of hope. Just when people are kicking you down and people are writing Arsenal off, are they going to continue this journey in the Champions League? Hopefully they are. It's Newman calling. He wants his coin. He has to come back on the show, and we have to talk about the coin because I got a video to play. It's very important that Newman makes an appearance. And through some investigative work, we have a video to play. And look, I'm not going to go back on my word, but all I'm saying is that a committee and a board have made a review. And so there's something that we need to discuss. as a Squaddy family here. So if you hear from the man or you see him tweeting absolute bullshit on Twitter like he usually does, please do let me know. Generational Gooner, appreciate you as well. We're going to be back after the game tomorrow. And then on Wednesday, we have a Manchester United Arsenal preview with Adam Matic from FUTV. Adam has a great channel. He's been on the channel before. You guys really enjoyed him. One of the most sensible Manchester United voices out in the YouTube world. And so bringing him back for a chat about that big game at Old Trafford. I tell you what, if we don't beat that lot, oof, I'm going to be mad. But you never know with Manchester United and Arsenal games. But come on, this is the time. This is the now. And keep believing in the team. Let's hope that we're able to show up against PSV next week. This is one for you guys. And I'm going to let him have it. And you guys will let him have it too. But respectfully, remember, because that's how we do things over here at Squad Central. Jason Cundy will be back at Squad Central. As you know, he has been a guest on the show multiple times. And many of you really hate it when I bring him on. And a lot of you really love it when I bring him on. Especially the last time when we slapped them, was it 5-1? And I gave him the, has anyone seen? Remember that? Maybe I'll play that to him again when he comes back. But you'll be able to let him have it about Miles Lewis, Skelly and Waneri. You can fire questions and we will have an open, honest discussion and debate. Yeah, so that's what we've got planned in the next few shows. There'll be others that we're going to weave and plug in as well. So make sure you don't miss a beat on the community page. And Demian and Albert will also be back in the coming days with an Arsenal women's show as well. I spoke to Emma Hayes and that will go up in our video section. And there's another special Showbiz Squad coming, which I think you guys are going to love. That's all I've got time for today. Thank you so much for being here as always, my squaddies. To everyone in the house, thank you so much for hanging out with me this fine Monday evening. And Runs with Cows, I'm going to have you on after a post-game show, and you're going to be able to show your picture to everyone. We're going to do it together. So if you want to join me for a post-game show, Premier League or Champions League, you could, sorry, my hair's really grown and needs a cut and it keeps falling in my eyes. I do apologize. You can join me. Let me know. Just send me an email as well. All right. That's it, kids. Have a fantastic Monday night. Enjoy the game tomorrow. And no matter what happens, win, lose or draw, we'll be together and we'll talk about it. Until then, don't forget to tell your loved ones you love them. And remember, squaddies, at ease, at ease.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.
Jason Cundy notes are already coming.